evening. The room is well attended tonight, and as it should be. We have a really great panel who will come up momentarily. Have you had a good conference so far? Been really good? All right. You know, 1 week from now at this very moment, I will be going with my wife to her 40th high school class reunion. And I would much rather be here with you. So maybe we need to do this again next week. She said one of her classmates on her Facebook post had a little meme in there, and it said, you know what? I can still get into those earrings I wore at homecoming. That's a true story. I tell you what, this is such a great evening. Before we begin with our panel, it is my very great pleasure and privilege to invite to this stage Rose Benavides, chair from South Texas College. Come on up, Rose. That's the most important thing she is. She's also the chair of the ACCT board, but you know, we're going to let her talk a little bit about the upcoming Congress.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So you know a little about me, but Jay's absolutely right. One of the things that brings me the most pleasure and joy is being able to represent my community in the South Texas College Board of Trustees. I grew up when this college was just starting to be formed. I had an opportunity to learn from my dad, who was the trustee that represented the community or the section of the district that I represent currently. And so everyone always told me, or they still tell me really great stories about him, about the challenges that we face as a community, some that I got to see firsthand with high poverty, high unemployment, just a desperate need to bring educational opportunities to an area. And so I probably didn't start understanding until much later what it meant to be able to be part of groups that shape the policy and that literally transform and create generational change for individuals that desperately only want opportunities. So every day that I'm able to partake in this activity, I understand how fortunate I am, as I know many of you are. But one of the things that this job and this work allow us to do is to convene and share stories of success, share areas of need, and more importantly, get to learn from each other about how we can be better. And I am absolutely thrilled to remind everyone that barring any more hacks, in the next 2.5, 3 weeks, we shall convene in the great city of Las Vegas, Nevada. We will have one of, if not the largest group of attendance in the National Congress, and that is by the chairmanship of the great state of Texas, by the way. We will also have a record number, 126, I think was the last number I heard, of sessions that are going on simultaneously while we enjoy all of the wonders that the great city of Las Vegas has. So if you've not registered, I caution you, there will be a pause for a couple of days because Las Vegas can't make reservations right now. But we will find a way to accommodate you. So if you're already planning to be there, please take your wallet, take your luggage. And while Las Vegas is a risky city where all it seems to be a gamble, the sure bet is being part of a family that serves community colleges. So thank you all for that.
Ironically, I took a picture of us tonight over at the paddock and from up above, and my wife texts back and she goes, "Are y'all playing poker?" Because it looked like it. I couldn't figure out what she was talking about. But anyway, all right. So it's my great pleasure to introduce the following guests. But in an era where data drives innovation and financial decision making, our institutions stand at the intersection of educational opportunity and community vibrance. You'll hear that phrase a lot. Trustees and regents play a key role in providing oversight and accountability while also setting the climate and expectations for institutional change. You'll find supplementary information for this session on page 28 of your conference workbook. So you'll find that information there, plus along some questions that you could ask or your board should be asking about what will be presented momentarily. It truly is my great pleasure to introduce our subject matter experts for the evening. Nationally recognized leaders for community college leadership, highlighting student voices and sharing the vision for data-informed policymaking. You can view their full bios on the event website by scanning the QR code on your tables. Dr. Martha Ellis. Yes. She's kind of like Elvis. No, she has not. She's going to be in here another little while. A senior pathways lead for the Texas Success Center will facilitate this data dialogue. Dr. Ellis holds more than 35 years of experience in community colleges in Texas and New Mexico, including 2 college presidencies, provost, chief information officer, undergraduate dean, and faculty member. That makes me tired just saying all that. Wow. Dr. Ellis also helps lead the Texas Success Center's annual Board of Trustees Institute, focused on evidence-based inquiry and how boards can support sustainable institutional change at scale. I know some of y'all got to talk with Dr. Ellis earlier. Was anyone at the new trustee orientation? Would you raise your hand? Was that good or what? Did you learn a lot? Let's give Dr. Ellis a great hand for that. She does such a wonderful job leading us into this wonderful world of trusteeship. Also joining us tonight is Dr. Andrea Burridge, the Associate Vice Chancellor of Research, Analytics, and Decision Support for the Houston Community College System. Dr. Burridge engages in efforts across divisions to build capacity for student success and completion, supporting decision-making at all levels of the institution and collaborating across divisions to enable stakeholders to collect, analyze, and use data to advance the mission of the college. Houston Community College was recently named 2023 finalist by Excellencia in Education. Congratulations, HCC. And your final speaker of the evening is Dr. Linda Garcia, the Executive Director of the Center for Community College Student Engagement, also known as CCATT. Let's give that a round of applause. Yeah. Good. I like that. By delivering aha moments about the student experience based on insights that matter, CCATT assists institutions and policymakers in using information to promote improvements in student learning, persistence, and attainment. Prior to joining the team at CCATT, Dr. Garcia was Vice President of Community College Relations at I don't know, Roosh. See, I didn't know that. Roosh, I don't know everything. That's a joke. At the Roosh Graduate Center at National American University, and she has worked at Lone Star College, Maricopa Community Colleges, and the University of Texas at Brownsville, and Texas Southmost College. All right, there you go. All right, please help me welcome these 3 to the stage.
We are. Well, welcome to Data After Dinner. I must say, Nicole, you and the planning team had a great deal of courage to put a data session at the end of the day after dinner. But Andrea, Linda, and I promised to make this high energy, fast paced, and engaging conversation about data. So it's great to be with you all. As we move into this, we are going to focus on a framework around this conversation. This framework was adapted from the Aspen Institute for Community College Excellence program. Tonight, as you see, we're going to focus as a college understands and as trustees, you understand, commit, and set the strategic direction. And on that top line, we're really focusing on the third one, which has to do with setting student success goals, including early momentum indicators, including completion and success after completion in both transfer and in the workforce. So student post-completion data. Once you've set those goals as a board, we know that you want to align your actions to attain the goals and also monitor what matters. And so that's the bottom three. So as you're looking at focusing on board deliberations and monitoring what student success outcomes you're seeing across the board so that you can accomplish and align your vision, your budget, and your policies to support those student success goals, and also to make sure that your presidential evaluation also includes student success goals as part of the assessment each year. So with that in mind, I know you all know the difference between qualitative and quantitative data, but I want to give you the definitions that we're using tonight so that we're all on the same page. So again, with quantitative data, we're really focused on the how. How many students, how much, and how often. So how many students are completing student outcomes? When are they completing them? How often are they completing them? And we're gathering and measuring those numbers of students and counting the number of outcomes, and then using, of course, statistical analysis to learn about the quantitative data. So how are our students doing? The qualitative data tells us why. It tells us why are the numbers the way they are. By gathering student focus groups, student interviews, having student observations, we can understand the why behind the numbers. And we use the qualitative data and analyze that and come up with themes and categories so that we as leaders, both your CEO and your boards, can work together to improve the student outcomes. So the qualitative why helps us develop strategies to address the how, the quantitative data. So with that in mind, tonight we're going to look at both quantitative and qualitative data. And the first area we're going to look at is actually understanding who are the students that we serve. So I'm going to ask Andrea to come up and do the quantitative data. So come on up to the podium. When she finishes, then Linda's going to talk a little bit about qualitative data and understanding why our students are there.
Hey, good evening. Thank you for having us all today. So when we talk about who are our students, you know, the first thing people always want to know, about 40% of our students are Hispanic, about 25% of them are Black, about 14% of them are white, and about 12% of them are Asian. Those are our four biggest racial ethnic groups. 45% of our students are 25 and older, roughly 70% are part-time, and about 45% recently were Pell recipients. The problem is that doesn't tell you enough about how to serve our students. I just gave you a lot of demographics, but I didn't tell you what you need to know. I didn't tell you about their goals and their aspirations. I didn't tell you what motivates them, what their mindsets are, what their barriers are, what their challenges are, what their strengths are, what their assets are, what they come into the classroom bringing. And I didn't tell you anything about the type of instructional, academic, and student supports they need. And so one of the things we do is try to collect additional data that paints a fuller picture of who our students are, what their goals are, and what they're doing. So at HCC, one of the things we see in our surveys is that 47% of our students are the first in their family to attend college. It's important to know, though, that when we think about a first time in college student, we think about that 18-year-old. But our 36-year-olds, our 46-year-olds, and our 56-year-olds may also be first-time in college students. And with that comes a need for support because we have our own special language in higher ed, and it is hard to get it through the door. And so we know that when almost half of our students are the first in their family to attend college, we need supports that make them feel welcome, make them belong, and we need to include the entire family. We talked about that some this morning. Now, 35% of our students' first language is not English. That floored me the first time I read that. I was like, that can't be right. But when we look back, it is. In the region we serve, 25% of individuals are foreign born. So it's not a big leap to think that a community college could have 35% of its students whose first language is not English. And with that comes a very glorious, wonderful mix of cultures that come into our classroom, and also some barriers that we need to make sure we address when we support our students. 70% of our students work in addition to their schoolwork. And that means that goes into the statistic you saw about part-time. When you're working full-time, you don't have you may not be able to be a full-time student just because there are not that many hours in the day. And as you can see here, our students have very real fears that if they get up for work at 5 a.m., then try to take full-time classes, there's time poverty and they won't be able to maintain the grades and success they need to succeed. And speaking of time poverty, 35% of our students are primary caregivers to children who live with them, and 64% of them are caring for dependents. Now, dependents can be children, but it can also be individuals who are part of the sandwich generation. Some of our students are caring for parents and grandparents and extended family members. And so again, that has implications for how we support, how we schedule our classes, and for our students. Now, this is one of my favorite statistics on the other end. Did you know that students' parents tend to have higher GPAs than students who are not parents, but they are much less likely to graduate? Exactly. 52% of undergraduate parents, undergraduate students who were parents, leave school without a degree, compared to 32% of students without children. And yet, while they're in school, they have higher GPAs. That's something we can help. Okay. And 46% report facing mental health challenges. We've heard about mental health challenges in other sessions today. That's probably low because nationally that number is 56%. But again, that has implications for the policies and supports and the decisions that we make in our board meetings.
All right, thank you, Andrea, for bringing attention to the data. I want to make sure that we have some interaction today in what we're talking about. I know I'm going to be preaching to the choir, but I want you to tell your colleagues sitting next to you, and I want you to think about this. We asked students, what is college like? I want you to take a guess what they said. Tell your colleagues in about 10 seconds what they just said. College is like blank. What do you think they said? And Dr. Ellis, if you don't mind, I'm going to have some folks just share out loud really quick. Because I know it's in the evening and I see a hand raised back there. Okay, and we have a volunteer. College is like blank.
We said it's like a job.
College is like a job. That's a good one. Anybody else? College is like a juggling act. Yes, I heard somebody say something else right here. College is like going to the dentist. That is frightening. And we don't go to the dentist as often as we should, right? When we ask this question to students, and we have this video, and some of you may have seen it because I've been at your regional meetings. There's this one student, he said, college is like a dream. You make dreams come true. Students are bringing their hopes, aspirations, and dreams to the college, and they're relying on you, college leaders, to get them from the start line to the finish line. But along that way, we know that there's hurdles that they're going to jump. How do we make sure that we remove those hurdles, get them a ladder to jump over those hurdles? How do we do that? Knowing that 85% of the student population who responded to our survey said they're coming to your college to earn an associate degree. Let me say that again. 85%, but the outcomes don't align with that. I'm going to show you this video clip. And again, some of you may have seen it, but I'm sure most of you have not. It's one of our most popular videos. It's popular because of the message that's being communicated. It's going to pull some emotional heartstrings. It might make your heart sad. I want you to listen closely, and I want you to pay attention and think about what resonates with me. And then I'll give you maybe about 15 seconds to share with your colleague.
I like to push myself mentally. I like to listen in and learn new things. And I know that's what college is all about. You know, they teach me stuff high school won't. And I'm all about learning new things. I love education. So I have to admit I was nervous too, like any incoming freshman, but you know, it's just, you know, you just got to see it as, you know, just another day at school. So like, you know, you just adapt to it. I mean, I did. It's easy. It's just a lot of homework. I don't like homework. I mean, school's all right, you know, I like it, but it's just, you know, it's not for everybody. And, you know, I guess I'm just one of those people that it's not for. Maybe sometime later on in life, I'll pick it back up again, but, you know, just, it is what it is.
Take about 15 seconds. Share with your colleague what stood out. What did you hear? What broke your heart? Sure. Let's bring the conversation back to the front of the room. What are some of the thoughts that were shared? What did you hear? He got bummed out. He lost hope. He lost the dream. Did you see how he was communicating? He was very confident. But then at the last video, in that same semester, he's a brand new student. He was hiding behind his hoodie. The way he was communicating verbally and physically absolutely changed. And so CCATT, we are here to help you with those students. There's a lot of students that can navigate the path, but those who can't, how can we help them get to the finish line? We did a study that was sponsored by the Greater Texas Foundation. It's called Listen to Me. And students said, going to college, it's like walking a tightrope every day. So can you expand that safety net for me? And what does that mean, expanding that safety net? Can you make sure things are inescapable for us? Yes, we don't want to do orientation, but we find the value of orientation. Can you connect us to tutoring? Can you make sure tutoring is embedded into our courses? Let me share a little bit of data really quick before we go to the next question. We are collecting data all this year on mental health and well-being. We are making sure that we are there for college leaders like you to make sure that you can look at the student holistically. Because students say when they come to the campus, what's really preventing them from moving forward is that they're trying to survive. And yes, they may have some struggles, and yes, they need tutoring, but they're saying, I have so much going on beyond the coursework that's taking priority. 29% of our students, the Texas students who responded to our survey on mental health, said they have needed help for emotional and mental health problems in the last 12 months. 38% said they would not know where to go if they needed help. And 31% said the lack of resources such as money, time, transportation would be a barrier for them for seeking help. Here's another one, basic needs. And I know a lot of you are doing work on housing or food or transportation. 36% of the Texas respondent students at the community college said in the last 30 days, the food they bought just didn't last. And 11% said their college didn't help them get the food when they needed it. When we were interviewing students, I had a student say, you know, on Sundays I would go to Golden Corral because if you've been into Golden Corral, you get a receipt. And when you sit at the table, you have the waitress or waiter coming to look at the receipt. Did you purchase? That student that I spoke to said, I didn't have a receipt, but that waitress knew kind of detected my situation. And at that moment when she did, I would be okay if she called the cops because I would have a place to stay and I would have food to eat. There was another student that I spoke to who said, when I have food, I only reserve the food for the days I have class because I must concentrate. The other days, I'm just starving. Those are the stories of our students. And that's why we want to humanize the data, because there's so much that they're struggling with. But I will transfer it now to Dr. Ellis.
Thanks, Andrea and Linda. I think what you're seeing is what's leading us into the next question that we're focused on, and that is how many and which students are progressing. We saw James's story. You heard the qualitative data that Linda gave you regarding basic needs and mental health. And so if we're looking at trying to understand this, we need to really understand which students and how many are actually progressing. What you see up here is just an example that we know that students who do well in the first term, and particularly the first year, are more likely to graduate. That first year builds momentum, and that's why we call them momentum metrics. And so when we're looking at this and looking at, again, so students don't lose their dream, they are actually going to complete their college credential or transfer to a university. What type of data do we want to look at so that we can develop programs and intervene or support them while they are on their journey, as they said, to complete or transfer? So let me turn it over to Andrea to give you an example of what she's been showing to the HCC board as they're looking at this particular aspect.
So when we look at data, I think about the who, the what, the why, and the how. The first question is who is in the data and also who is not in the data. But I'm going to show you data about our Achieving the Dream cohort. Those are our summer or fall start new to HCC students. They are degree and award seeking. They are full-time or part-time. They can be any age, but they're not dual credit students. They are post-dual credit. So now the what. This data is about cohort progression. So this is about how students are moving through our program. And it's really about transfer and award. When our students answer, what is your goal? The two most common answers are award and transfer. Now, looking at this slide for the what, the dark brownish color is the students who are still enrolled. The far left of this slide is those who are enrolled 1 year, the second fall, which is fall to fall persistence. They're enrolled at the start of their second year. The third fall is at the end of 2 years, which for a full-time student would be where they would expect to graduate. Now, our students typically are not full-time, so they are taking longer. The right-hand side is at the end of 3 years, which is time and a half. So what we can see for the dark brown is that 45%, and this is our fall 19 pandemic cohort. So this is a cohort for which retention and award were lower than some other cohorts, but the pattern is similar. So in this cohort, after 1 year, 45% of the students who started were still enrolled. 5% of them, the light blue is transfer, and 2% of them, the medium blue, is award. The dark blue are the students who transferred and got an award. So take a minute and look at this, and then talk to your colleagues at your table about what you see here. What strikes you? And this is harder than I find with my students too, that talking about data is difficult, but what strikes you about this graph, including what questions do you have? Okay, let's see. I did. Okay, so what do you see? Any brave souls out there? A lot of them disappear. That's the first thing, especially that COVID year. About 50% of them disappeared and didn't return. Those students are James. What else do you see? One thing we noticed was we think award and transfer. They're not award and then transfer. They're transferring or awarding. They're really not doing both with any large frequency. And so that's certainly eye-opening. If you look at the end of the third year, 14% of the students are still enrolled. So they're still working towards their award or transfer. 16% of them have transferred. That's low. We hope that will continue to go up, and it does as if you look out further. 9% of them have an award. Only 5% of them have done both. So here's a question, and I'm going to leave this as an open question. What does that mean for policy? What does an award, how does an award benefit a student before transfer? Does it benefit a student before transfer? That's a deep question that I'm not going to try to answer today. Okay. So when we think about, make sure this doesn't be the why. Why do you think this happened in the COVID year? Why do you think there was so, why the whys behind it is another thing I encourage both our leaders and I encourage trustees to ask. What is a phenomena that's the chart is describing? What seems to be working and what is not? One thing you noticed is the attrition during that first year. That's clearly something that should be a priority. The how is how are we going to address this? It's the who, what, and why questions look into the past. But then the next question to ask is how? How are we going to address this? How do we scale programs that work? How can the board help? Now, with the who, what, and how, in those questions is who, in what groups do we see relatively stronger outcomes, and what groups need more support from the institution? This slide disaggregates the data at 2 years. So at the end of what would be 100% of the time, 2 years, by our demographic groups. One of the things that really struck me there is when I look at the Pell first fall and the students who did not receive a Pell first fall, we saw that the students who received a Pell are more likely to remain enrolled. If you look at that in isolation, Pell students seem more successful. On the other hand, that's made up by transfer. Our students who are not receiving Pell, so who are relatively more well off, are transferring out at a greater rate. One next question to ask would be, well, do the Pell students catch up? It is just that they're staying at the community college longer for financial reasons. The Pell students never catch up. So that suggests something about supporting students through transfer, particularly our lower income students. A third way we look at this is by our personas. And here I've given you data on 4 of our personas. So the persona at the far right is our 4-year focus. That is a traditional student who came in with a transfer objective. The second is the proactive professional. That student is about 25 to 35. They have been successfully working a job, and they have realized that in order to get that promotion, they need a bachelor. This student is likely to say that they are training the person who is going to be their supervisor, and they're tired of it. So they are coming back to school to get that bachelor's. Fast track to the field is a traditional age student seeking a workforce degree. And certified to succeed is a non-traditional student, again, probably 27 to 35, seeking an additional credential to move up into their job, but it's likely to be a shorter term workforce credential. So knowing that, let's take another minute. And what do you see here? Talk amongst yourselves. Okay. And so, what do you see here? It makes sense. We see the highest transfer I just heard from this table in the proactive professional. They're going to transfer. They're not necessarily interested in the community college associates. The certified to succeed has the highest rate of award, but you'd want it to be much higher. One question I would immediately ask is, but it leads to a lot of questions, why? And again, at this point, I'll pass it to Linda.
Let me just pause for a moment and just acknowledge that the work that you're doing regarding transfer. I've been involved in the Texas Guided Pathways Institutes, and your colleges are bringing teams, and you're really digging deep on transfer. So just for 2 seconds, give yourself a round of applause just for the work that you're doing. But now let's talk about the reality. So I know there is this new performance-based funding that's coming. I've learned so much from Dr. Ellis, especially this week with her video that she shared with the coaches. And transfer is so critical. So let me give you some nuggets as you think about focusing on transfer with your college, your students. We asked students in the state of Texas who responded to our survey, what is your primary goal for attending your community college? Do you want to take a guess the percentage of students who said transfer? Share in 3 seconds with your colleague, the percentage of students, and I'm talking about maybe about over 20,000 students, the percentage of students who said they would choose transfer. Is it higher than 60? Below 60? 80% of Texas students said they chose your community college to transfer. Remember, 85% are saying that they want to also earn an associate degree. But we asked them also, do you utilize the transfer advising services? What do you think they said? That's right, my friend, 61% said they've never used it. But when we dug into the data, and we're releasing a report on November 8th, all about transfer and hoping to help your conversations with this. This is what was so interesting, because students are coming and they're relying on you to get that information, but there's opportunities for conversations, because listen to this. Students who want to transfer, 36% of them said they know they want to transfer and they know what they want to study and they know where they want to go. 36, but the rest say they know they want to transfer, but they don't know what they want to study. They know what they want to study, but they don't know where to transfer. There's opportunities there to really engage with them and to make sure that they're connected, that they have a path, because your colleges are doing work in guided pathways. So I want you to take a listen to these students on what they say would help them with transfer advising.
I think it'd be helpful if they offered more services to make sure that what you're taking is actually going to be transferred to the college that you're going to. I think that'd be very helpful, because it helps save money and time. Because as a student, when you realize you've taken a class that you don't need, you wasted that time and that money, and that hurts everywhere in your pocket, and it hurts in the fact that you're a year behind, a semester behind.
So I think the community colleges should just, I guess, have an option in the application, whether what your intentions are. Do you plan on graduating from that two-year university or college, or transferring? And if you're transferring, throw I guess, like ways or help me transfer right at me.
I would say, particularly with the community college that I attended, be a little more updated on the degree plans. The degree plans change, and one class 1 year was accepted, the next year it's not accepted for particular degree plan. So if they could keep that communication, it would make it easier for us when we transfer, to save money and time, you know.
Advice that I would have for the community colleges for transfer students would be to offer more opportunities to teach us of the services offered, the resources offered. There were very little opportunities where I learned of the resources that were offered for transfer students. And that would definitely be a benefactor in the future for community college students.
So thanks, Linda, for sharing that video. I think that you see from that video, if we listen to our students, they tell us what they need. And so we saw from the data that Andrea presented what the actual progression was of students. And then we saw from Linda and heard from our students what they need to make that progression at a higher rate, both in completing degrees and also transferring. One of the things that I want to say is I want to ask two questions of our panelists in just a minute, but one of the things that I really appreciate that we're seeing on our campuses now is the transparency in quantitative data, and also the transparency in listening to our students from the focus groups and respecting and valuing their input. It takes courage for you as board members to look at that data, to hear from your students, and then make changes based on what you hear without being defensive or basically making excuses for it. So I applaud all of you. You should applaud yourself as well for that. But with that, I'm going to encourage you to continue to do this and ask our two panelists who work with boards both locally and nationally a couple of questions. So what does a board do with all of this data? How do they, once they understand the data, what decisions do they make about the actions? How do they set the direction and create the culture so that they can support the CEO to make reforms to improve student outcomes for both transfer and the workforce? So the first question I have for both of you is, how often would you recommend that the boards monitor student success data, and for what purpose? So whoever wants to go first, you've got the mics.
Well, since I'm in the world of data all the time, I would say all the time.
Okay, now they don't meet all
I
the
know,
time, Linda.
but they don't
only
meet all the
once a
time.
month.
Yes, I know. I would encourage that every time there's conversations at the board in your meetings, that you're thinking about the student voice. If there is a priority that is set with the president, making sure that we humanize the data, making sure that we invite students into the conversation. And I believe that some of the boards have maybe a student representative and some may not. But I would encourage, have that voice, because the students actually tell us what they need. And that's why we called our national report that was published last year, Listen to Me. Are we hearing them? Because we make so much assumptions that sometimes our assumptions are not correct, but if we just pay attention, and students want to share their story. So if there's opportunities at the meeting just to focus on a nugget, but include the student voice, I would say that would be critical.
So I agree. I, of course, would also say that student success data belongs at every board meeting. In terms of the metrics that go with the strategic plan, one of the most important things is to set a cadence to evaluate those metrics and to monitor them year to year, both looking at the trends over time and if the gains that you expect and that we need are being made. Between those meetings where you monitor the strategic metrics, which may not change that often. For example, completion really only changes once a year. Think about what data are you seeing about the strategies and initiatives and programs that the institution is using to move the needle? And what data do we have on the effectiveness of those programs, particularly on the momentum metrics that happen in that first year?
Terrific, thanks. Having that plan and the cadence of seeing data on an annual basis or monthly, great. The last question that I have for both of you is, so how can the board really develop a decision-making process to utilize this data, both quantitative and qualitative, to support their limited number of annual priorities as they want to accomplish their goals and the direction that they've set for the college, and also, of course, for the budget and for the policy that we've talked about earlier. So how can they develop a decision-making process?
Well, and again, I think it's with choosing the metrics that matter in the strategic planning process, and then making sure that the strategies, that the conversations are designed to move that needle, that the board stays on topic towards evaluating the big picture that they're looking at. The board really leads by example. So also by asking for data and asking for questions and asking about all of the different groups and how those groups are progressing, the board sets a tone for an administration that can be very powerful in monitoring and improving, helping the institutions to reach their missions.
So I would agree in closing what Andrea said, looking at the metrics, but let me give you just an example here. We're doing a pilot study on dual enrollment. We have 17 colleges administering this pilot. Out of the 17, we have 5 from the state of Texas participating in this. We're learning so much about dual enrollment. So here's an example. We've learned that 12% of the responders from this pilot, they plan to attend the community college, but we have presidents coming to SESI and saying, that's not enough. Why aren't they just, all of them not continuing with us? They're leaving us. So what are some of the opportunities there? So what we're learning is that students are saying, when I have communications about dual enrollment, it's mostly with the counselor. I'm not really having conversations with somebody at the college. There's an opportunity for communication. There's a gap right there as well. They also said that no one from the college is contacting them if they're struggling with dual enrollment. So think about if that were your college, what would be the decision-making process? That data is presented to you. So what would be some of the steps that you would take in hopes that you would invite maybe a dual enrollment student to come to give voice to the data? But there's so many ways to show metrics, but I want really encourage you to think about dual enrollment because I know that's part of House Bill 8 as well, right? So transfer and dual enrollment.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. Do we have any questions? Yes, Kay Paul has a question.
Exactly, that's what it meant. So students said, if I receive information, I'm speaking to the high school counselor. So high school counselor, yes, sorry for not clarifying that. So we're communicating that in our pilot to presidents, and they're taking opportunities to make sure that they have their advisors housed at the high schools, that they're making sure that they're visiting, because high school students are saying, I don't have a lot of communication with anybody from the college. And so it really boils down to relationship building to make sure that there's that connection. And I see there was probably another question.
Another question? Do we have another
From
question?
South Texas College?
In court. Oh, great. Question back here. Yes, we have one over here.
So all day long, we've been hearing about innovation and, providing flex teaching and giving students options to be online and to do all these things behind the screen, and they don't have to come to school. But yet we know that a large number of our students are struggling with either mental health or physical health or hunger or whatever it might be, food insecurity, sorry. How do we find that balance of knowing that they need to be in school? Like, we know that since COVID, our students are probably 2.5 years behind the learning curve. We already know that. And yet we're going to continue to provide them the option to be online with no additional support or instruction. So where's the balance?
So I think the last part of your statement of no additional support is the critical piece there. If we realize that students are choosing online, then how do we provide the services? And those of you that are heavily engaged with helping to connect with students and helping them belong, that includes your virtual students. So let me turn it over. I think both of them.
Yeah, so we're both grabbing the mic here. One of the things about online students is it doesn't mean they're not getting physical support. Our online students are generally from the greater Houston area, and they come to our food pantries. They can get a bus pass. They use our computer labs. And so they do use the supports in the institution, and those can be really valuable because one of the things our online students tell us, and that we heard during the pandemic, is that it can be really hard to work at home when you have your kids, you have family, you have a lot going on, and you may not have the technology you need there. And so we think a lot about how we support our online students in person, even if their coursework is online.
We did a study on that. Thank you for asking that question last year, where it was about the online learning, and we compared them to students who were face-to-face. The difference that we found is students who were online, their interactions with faculty and with peers were absolutely a lot lower than the face-to-face. That did not surprise us as to us as well. But students talked about if there are support services, and this is so notable, can you make sure that the instructors know, especially part-time, and it was just so impressive how they were thinking in that way. Can you please provide the development for part-time instructors to know about those resources? Can you even ask them to create a syllabus and put it in their course syllabus? Because there's so much information that's being thrown out at us that we cannot memorize, we cannot think about it. We have juggling priorities. But if there's something that you can make it inescapable, whether it's in the course management system, the syllabus, that the instructor even asks questions, what's going to prevent you from being successful in my course? Can we just start there? Because I'm not going to go to you and share my story, but I just need you to open the door for me to have that conversation.
And they do more than before the pandemic. We're hearing from students that they really value and need that engagement and connection. So when they are online, and there are times when students do need to be online, we do need to figure out how to help them connect with our faculty, our staff, and other students.
I think we have to help our faculty know how to connect with our online students.
So my question is, I feel like a lot of the services and whatnot that we do is very reactive, especially in terms of like, we wait till the students are at our institutions within their first semester, and then we start seeing, oh, they're struggling, and then we try to jump in and like be reactive. And in my work in retention, I do that at the university, and I often wonder, like, how can we be more proactive in terms of like doing onboarding or ensuring that we're doing things like ensuring they're college ready for like TSI and stuff like that, and kind of reaching down in, say, the high schools for those types of students, or being proactive with our more adult students and preparing them like a semester ahead of time so that they come in more prepared and not getting overwhelmed and needing to take advantage of all of these services, or connecting them with these services before they even really start. So that's my question.
So one of the things that we find, definitely, we begin, and we actually had a conversation recently about this with our trustees, is that reaching out to students should not start when they're seniors in high school. It should start when they're in 9th grade. So when we think about sort of a longer runway, it gets easier to provide students with the support they need to enter the institution, to build up both the belief that they are and can be a successful college student, to understand the types of programs that we offer, and to sort of be prepared in all the ways that means to enter college. So one way, I think, is to rethink the runway. The other is for our faculty and staff to think about what students are learning and what they're becoming and what they're doing during that first year. When we do interviews with some of our faculty who are the most successful, we find that they put a lot, again, they understand how to engage students and how to help students engage with each other. And they help students develop belief in themselves. And when students have that belief, then even if they enter not college ready, they're able to get to where they need to get. It's when they lose that belief in themselves, which we saw very powerfully early, that we lose those students.
And I'm thinking about the adult learner. And so you have students who just don't come out of high school. So those students, when we talk to them, they say, you know, when you go to the doctor and when you have a good physician, the doctor sits down, listens, understands your story. Tell me about what you're feeling. Tell me about some of the challenges you're experiencing. They said, what if that was done for us as well? Can someone just sit down? I want to tell my story one time, not multiple times to many people. I want someone to know me because I want to tell you, I'm working full time. In fact, I'm working 3 jobs. I have dependents. I'm caring for my parents as well. All these things. And then if I tell you that, maybe you can help me formulate a path. And maybe I'm thinking I'm going to go full time, but you're going to tell me realistically, I can't go full time because I have the reality that I'm facing. So can you just listen to me and tell me it right in the beginning? And so now we have to think about advisors. Now, if we put that on advisors, that is a lot because the case management is at your colleges, is it more than 400, 500, 600? It has to be everyone's job, even with faculty too. How do we train folks to have those conversations with students, personalize, get to know them?
So let me thank you for doing that. I want to just close with a couple of things here. One, first of all, you've heard about connection to students throughout the conversation. The data provides you with a window into what your students are experiencing, both the quantitative and the qualitative, but repeatedly you've heard. And I propose to you that that data is helping you to connect to your students because you're getting to see the big picture of what's going on. And therefore you as a board can set that strategic direction, can set those goals, and can set the culture of connection and belonging to students is a critical aspect for what you're doing. I will tell you with the Talent Strong Texas Pathways, we are saying that belongingness is a critical component to everything that we are now doing at colleges, which really gets to the point of, we talk about that we want students that are ready for college. And I propose to you that we need our colleges to be ready for the students that we are coming through our doors. And that's what we can really do together. Let me say, as we thank our panelists, that I want you to give yourself a round of applause for all the work you're doing with data and understanding your students. Thank you for the data after dinner conversation. Appreciate your engagement and interaction. And it is always a joy to be with you. So let me turn it back over to Jay.
All right. I want to invite Susan up real quick. Susan has some gifts for our speakers. Ladies, thank you very much. These are special CCATT pens, limited edition. We're going to trademark and then put on those pens later, data after dark. I think that would be really cool. Thank you so much, Martha, Andrea. Linda, thank you so much. That's so good. I will tell you, let me move this thing out. One thing I heard over and over was how important it is to know our students. Absolutely, we must keep them the central focus. And we are all dream makers. They have the dreams, the hopes, and the aspirations. Are we able to help them fulfill their dreams, hopes, and aspirations? We're not going to be like the fulfillment center at Amazon. It's not going to be the next day. In fact, it's going to take a while for some. But we've got to know our students well enough to know what they dream about, what they hope for, what they aspire to. That's our calling. And for everybody in this room, that is our mission, and it's sacred, and we can never lose the sight that our students come first. So thank you so much for this tonight. It's very powerful. We have, what a great day. This has been wonderful. I'm inspired and I'm energized. I was getting a little tired. I don't think it's the sugar on the churros that's talking here. But I'm telling you, I'm jazzed. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. One thing I want to tell you before you go tonight is that we have voting that happens tomorrow. Voting delegates must be present tomorrow, 9:30 to 10:30 in here, right in here for the CATT annual business meeting. We encourage you, everyone, to join us in the morning. We have breakfast at 8. And then I will tell you at 8:45, we have my good friend and colleague from Amarillo College, the managing partner at the Innovation Outpost, Todd McLeese. He is going to be a great accompaniment to Mike Moe. Mike did a great job kind of throwing this all out there and just making our heads spin. And then Todd is going to give some context for that and make us think as deeper as well. Before I leave you, as we were getting the presentation tonight, I just have to leave you with this. You think data is confusing? Try being a high school principal who gets, hey, today the donkey ultrasound went well. Y'all have a good night.